Gordon Banks, OBE, is a former England international football goalkeeper. He made 628 appearances during a 15-year career in the Football League, and won 73 caps for his country. Regarded as one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time, the IFFHS named Banks the second-best goalkeeper of the 20th century, after Lev Yashin and ahead of Dino Zoff. He was named FWA Footballer of the Year in 1972, and was named FIFA Goalkeeper of the Year on 6 occasions. He joined Chesterfield in March 1953, and played for the youth team in the 1956 FA Youth Cup final. He made his first team debut in November 1958, and was sold to Leicester City for £7,000 in July 1959. He played in 4 cup finals for the club, as they were beaten in the 1961 and 1963 FA Cup finals, before winning the League Cup in 1964 and finishing as finalists in 1965. During this time he established himself as England's #1 goalkeeper, and played every game of the nation's 1966 World Cup victory. Despite this success, he was dropped by Leicester and sold on to Stoke City for £50,000 in April 1967. He made one of the game's great saves to prevent a Pelé goal in the 1970 World Cup, but was absent due to illness as England were beaten by West Germany at the quarter-final stage. He was Stoke's goalkeeper in the 1972 League Cup win, the club's only major honour. He was still Stoke and England's #1 when a car crash in October 1972 cost him both the sight in one eye and his professional career. He did though play in the United States for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers in 1977 and 1978. He briefly entered management with Telford United, but left the game after he was sacked in December 1980. Club career. Chesterfield. Banks was born in Sheffield, West Riding of Yorkshire, and brought up in the working-class area of Tinsley. The family later moved to the village of Catcliffe after his father set up a betting shop. This brought greater prosperity but also misery, as one day Banks's disabled brother was mugged for the shop's daily takings, and died of his injuries some weeks later. He left school in December 1952, and took up employment as a bagger with a local coal merchant, which helped to build up his upper body strength. He spent a season playing for amateur side Millsport FC. After the regular goalkeeper failed to turn up for a match, the club's trainer spotted Banks amongst the spectators and invited him to play in goal, as he was aware that Banks had previously played for Sheffield schoolboys. His performances there earned him a game in the Yorkshire League for Raw Marsh Welfare. However, a 12-2 defeat to Stocksbridge Works on his debut was followed by a 3-1 home defeat, and he was dropped by Raw Marsh and returned to Millsport. Still aged 15, he then switched jobs to become a hod carrier. He was scouted by Chesterfield whilst playing for Millsport, and offered a 6-game trial in the youth team in March 1953. He impressed enough in these games to be offered a part-time £3 a week contract by manager Teddy Davison in July 1953. The reserve team were placed in the Central League on account of a powerful club director rather than on merit, and Banks conceded 122 goals in the 1954-55 season as the Spirites finished in last place with only 3 victories. Banks was posted to Germany with the Royal Signals on national service, and won the Rhine Cup with his regimental team. He recovered from a fractured elbow to help the Chesterfield youth team to the 1956 final of the FA Youth Cup. but they were beaten 4-3 on aggregate by Manchester United's famous Busby Babes, a team that included both Wilf McGuinness and Bobby Charlton. Banks was given his first team debut by manager Doug Livingston, at the expense of long-serving Ron Powell, in a third-division game against Colchester United at Saltergate in November 1958. The game ended 2-2, and Banks kept his place against Norwich City in the following match, and he missed only 3 games by the end of the 1958-59 season due to injury. With no goalkeeping coaching to speak of, Banks had to learn from his mistakes on the pitch, and he soon developed into a modern vocal goalkeeper who ordered the players in front of him into a more effective defense. Having just 23 league and 3 cup appearances to his name, it came as a surprise to Banks when Matt Gillies, manager of First Division club Leicester City, bought him from Chesterfield for £7,000 in July 1959. This also meant a wage increase to £15 a week. Leicester City. Banks faced competition from 5 other goalkeepers, including 30-year-old Scotland international John Anderson and 25-year-old Dave McLaren. He started the 1959-60 season as the reserve team's goalkeeper, in effect making him the club's second choice ahead of 4 of his rivals but behind first-team choice McLaren. He had played 4 reserve team games when McLaren picked up an injury, and manager Matt Gillies selected Banks for his Leicester debut against Blackpool at Filbert Street on the 9th of September. The match finished 1-1, with Jackie Muddy's strike enhancing at Ken Leake's opener. Banks retained his place for the 2-0 defeat against Newcastle United at St James Park 3 days later. With McLaren fit again, Banks was sent back to the reserves, but after the first team conceded 14 goals in the next 5 games, he was recalled and became the first-choice goalkeeper for the remainder of the season. The defensive record did not improve at first, with Banks conceding 6 in a heavy defeat to Everton at Goodison Park, but he improved in each match and the Foxes settled for a comfortable 12th place finish. In training, he worked extensively on improving his weaknesses, such as coming for crosses. He put in extra hours during training and came up with practice sessions to improve his skills. This was largely unique in an era where there were no specialized goalkeeping coaches. In the summer, both Anderson and McLaren departed, leaving Banks as the club's undisputed number 1 ahead of a group of understudies. Leicester finished 6th in 1960-61, and managed to beat champions Tottenham Hotspur at White Hart Lane. Yet the greatest accomplishment was in reaching the final of the FA Cup, with Banks conceding only 5 goals in the 9 games en route to the final and keeping 3 clean sheets in the semi-final and 2 replays against Sheffield United. Goals from Jimmy Walsh and Ken Leake finally broke the deadlock in the second replay at St Andrews. Their opponents in the final at Wembley were Tottenham, who had already won the First Division title by an 8-point margin. Right-back Len Chalmers picked up a severe injury early in the match, and with Ken Leake dropped for disciplinary reasons in rookie Hughie McIlmoyle's favour, City were effectively playing with 10 men and offered little threat going forward. Bobby Smith and Terry Dyson gave Spurs a 2-0 win and the first double of the 20th century, with Banks unable to prevent either goal. The 1961-62 season proved to be highly disappointing, as Leicester finished 14th in the league and exited the FA Cup at the hands of Stoke City. The only highlight was the club's participation in the European Cup Winners' Cup. which actually put Banks in the difficult position of choosing to play for his club against Spanish club Atletico Madrid, choosing to attend the England vs Portugal match as a non-playing squad member. He elected to attend both games, leaving London at full time to reach Leicester 30 minutes before the kick-off against Madrid. A last-minute goal earned the Spaniards a 1-1 draw at Filbert Street. In the return leg, Banks saved an Enrique Collar penalty, but Madrid were awarded a second penalty which Collar converted, and Leicester lost the game 2-0. Banks broke his nose at Craven Cottage on the opening day of the 1962-63 season, in a 2-1 defeat to Fulham. Leicester went to chase a possible double, reaching the FA Cup semi-finals whilst lying top of the table in April. City beat Liverpool 1-0 at Hillsborough to reach the final, with Banks keeping a clean sheet despite his goal being under near constant siege from the Merseyside club. The News of the World reported that Liverpool had had 34 attempts on goal to Leicester's 1, and Banks later stated that it was his finest performance at club level. Yet Banks then broke a finger in a 2-1 defeat to West Bromwich Albion at the Hawthorns, and was out injured as Leicester lost the final 3 league games to end the season in a disappointing 4th place. In the 1963 FA Cup final, Banks and the rest of the team underperformed and lost the game 3-1 to Manchester United. City ended the 1963-64 season in 11th place, having been inconsistent all season. Success instead came through the League Cup, as they beat West Ham United 6-3 over 2 legs in the semi-finals to reach the final against Stoke City. The opening tie at the Victoria Ground finished 1-1 in extremely muddy conditions as Banks spilled a shot from Bill Asprey, with Keith Bebbington pouncing on the rebound. Back at Filbert Street, goals from Mike Stringfellow, Dave Gibson and Howard Riley won the game for Leicester 3-2 and settled the tie at 4-3. Banks started the 1964-65 season on wages of £40 a week, and the club only agreed to pay £60 a week in December. These miserly wages made it difficult for the club to spend the £80,000 it received for the sale of Frank McClintock. He had put in a transfer request over dissatisfaction with his pay, and quality replacements were reluctant to join a club that paid full internationals like Banks and McClintock no more than the base rate that rival clubs paid to average players. Leicester finished 18th in the league and were knocked out of the FA Cup by Liverpool at Anfield in the 6th round. In the League Cup, City struggled to get past Peterborough United, Grimsby Town and Crystal Palace, before they recorded an 8-1 victory over Coventry City at Highfield Road. After easing past Plymouth Argyle in the semi-finals, Banks found himself playing in another League Cup final. However, Chelsea won the final after successfully defending the 3-2 win at Stamford Bridge with a goalless draw at Filbert Street. He missed the first 9 games of the 1965-66 season after breaking his wrist diving at the feet of Northampton Town's Joe Kiernan in a pre-season friendly. Leicester finished the season in 7th spot, and exited both cup competitions at the hands of Manchester City. Despite being a World Cup winner in the previous summer, Banks was dropped towards the end of the 1966-67 season for highly promising teenage reserve Peter Shilton. Manager Matt Gillies was blunt, telling Banks, "We think your best days are behind you, and you should move on." Teammate Richie Norman told Banks that Gillies was pressured into the decision after Shilton told the board he would leave the club unless he was given first-team football. Banks was transfer listed at £50,000, the same price the club received for Derek Dougan in March 1967. However, many of the big clubs were unwilling to outlay such an expense on a goalkeeper. Liverpool manager Bill Shankly showed strong interest, but could not convince the club's board of directors to agree to such a large fee for a goalkeeper. West Ham United manager Ron Greenwood was prepared to match the fee, but instead signed Kilmarnock's Bobby Ferguson for £65,000, as he had already agreed terms with Kilmarnock and did not want to go back on his word. Terms were instead agreed with Stoke City, a mid-table First Division side. Stoke City, on leaving Filbert Street, Banks requested a loyalty bonus from Leicester, and was told by Matt Gillies, "We've decided not to pay you a penny. There's to be no compensation payment, and that's final." Banks then refused the move until Stoke boss Tony Waddington seemingly negotiated a £2,000 payment out of Leicester. It was only some years later that Banks was informed that Stoke had actually made the payment, not Leicester. Waddington valued good goalkeepers highly, and the two built up a close relationship. During this time, Banks moved to Madeley, Staffordshire. He replaced John Farmers as the club's number one, and kept goal in the last 4 games of the 1966-67 season, making his home debut at the Victoria Ground in a 3-1 win over former club Leicester. Banks fitted in well at Stoke, as Waddington built a team of veteran players who were judged by some to be past their best. The Potters struggled near the foot of the First Division table in the 1967-68 and 1968-69 campaigns, before rising to 9th place in the 1969-70 season. Banks remained a reliable stopper for the club, though on the 1st of March 1969 he was knocked unconscious at Roker Park by Sunderland's Malcolm Moore, and his replacement David Hurd conceded 4 goals in a 4-1 defeat. Banks also played a season for the Cleveland Stokers of the American United Soccer Association in the summer of 1968. He played 7 of the short-lived club's 12 games in Cleveland, Ohio. Banks made what he believed to be 3 of the best saves of his career in a Stoke shirt. In the first instance, he saved and caught a powerful and well-placed header from Manchester City's Wyn Davies from just 8 yards out. In the second case, he saved a Francis Lee header at Main Road, and he made his 3rd great save for the club by catching a volley from Tottenham Hotspur's Alan Gilzean that had been hit from just 6 yards out. At White Hart Lane, Stoke began to compete for honours in the 1970-71 season, though despite impressive victories against the top 2 clubs, Arsenal and Leeds United, City ended the season in mid-table obscurity. The club's great achievement was in reaching the semi-finals of the FA Cup, beating Millwall, Huddersfield Town, Ipswich Town and Hull City en route. Facing Arsenal at Hillsborough in the semi-finals, they lost a 2-goal lead to draw 2-2, and were then beaten 2-0 in the replay at Villa Park. Despite another mid-table finish in 1971-72, Stoke beat Chesterfield, Tranmere Rovers, Hull City and Manchester United to reach another FA Cup semi-final. They again faced Arsenal, and once more a draw at Hillsborough meant a replay at Goodison Park. The Gunners' goals in a 2-1 victory came from a disputed Frank McClintock penalty and a John Radford goal that television replays showed was clearly offside. In a May 2011 interview, he said that he still felt cheated out of a chance to play for the club in an FA Cup final. Stoke and Banks found solace in the League Cup, though it took them 11 matches to reach the final after overcoming Southport, then Oxford United in a replay, Manchester United in a second replay, Bristol Rovers, and then West Ham United in a second replay following an aggregate draw after 2 2 legs. In extra time of the second leg with West Ham, Banks fouled Harry Redknapp to give up a penalty, and then saved Jeff Hurst's powerful spot kick to keep City in the competition. They then faced Chelsea in the final at Wembley. Peter Osgood beat Banks with a hooked shot just before half-time, but goals from Terry Conroy and George Eastham won Stoke the game at 2-1. At the end of the season, Banks was named as the FWA Footballer of the Year, becoming the first goalkeeper to receive the honor since Bert Trautmann in 1956. On the 22nd of October 1972, while driving home from a session on his injured shoulder with the Stoke physiotherapist, Banks lost control of his new Ford Consul car, which ended up in a ditch. He had attempted to overtake a car on a sharp turn and collided with an oncoming Austin A60 van. He was taken to the North Staffordshire Hospital and during an operation received 200 stitches in his face and over 100 micro-stitches inside the socket of his right eye, and was told the chances of saving the sight in his eye were 50-50. His sight never returned, and as the loss of binocular vision severely limited his abilities as a goalkeeper, he retired from professional football the following summer. Fort Lauderdale Strikers. In April 1977 he went to play as a named superstar in the North American Soccer League for Fort Lauderdale Strikers. The Strikers won the division in 1977, and Banks was named NASL Goalkeeper of the Year after he conceded only 29 goals in 26 games, the best defensive record in the NASL. He also played one League of Ireland game for St Patrick's Athletic, keeping a clean sheet in a 1-0 win over Shamrock Rovers at Richmond Park on 2 October 1977. He returned to Fort Lauderdale and played 11 games in the 1978 season.